accomplice to murder and the financing of terrorism. They're just two of the verdicts coming out of an historical trial here in Paris over the January 2015 attacks, which saw 17 people murdered. These initial rulings are the first in a process that sought to uncover whether the 14 defendants were involved in the killings at satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo and at a kosher supermarket. The three assailants were shot by police, but a network of people has been tried for providing arms and assistance to the killers. Now, the terrorism charges against 11 of those defendants have been maintained in only 5 cases. Our reporter Sharon Gaffney has been following developments in the courtroom. Sharon, hi, can you tell us more about these initial rulings?
Yes, well, the session got underway just after 4:10. So what's happening at the moment is the president of the court is reminding us of the charges against these 14 defendants and going back over what happened during those attacks here in Paris back in January 2015. The 14 people who are on trial, 3 of them are being charged in absentia, but they're being charged really to varying degrees of involvement with those attacks, from procuring weapons to providing logistical support to the gunmen who carried out those attacks. Now, the president of the court told us that, yes, those attacks, the one that took place at Charlie Hebdo and the later attack at the kosher supermarket, that they were linked. They were coordinated attacks. So far, charges in connection with 6 of the defendants. We've been told that they were convicted of some involvement with the attacks, but that the terror threshold had not been reached. Now, in relation to the man who's described as the main suspect, 35-year-old Ali Reza Polat, he has been convicted of complicity in terrorist killings. We were told throughout the trial that he was the right-hand man and the main link between the 2 attacks. In relation to, there's one other that we know of, Hayat Boumedia. Now, she was the girlfriend of the gunman who attacked the kosher supermarket. She fled to Syria in the week before the attacks, but she's on trial in absentia. She was convicted actually of links with terrorism and of financing terrorism. So of the charges discussed so far, we're still not sure in terms of the other defendants, and we're still not sure what sentences will be handed down to those who have been convicted so far.
Now, Sharon, as we mentioned, there are various charges, some of which are related to terrorism, against these 14 defendants. I can imagine that compiling evidence and measuring the various involvements of these individuals has been very challenging for the prosecution. Are we seeing that reflected in the verdict?
Well, that is the main challenge, of course, for the prosecutors. In terms of, let's just talk about the main suspect, Ali Reza Polat. When he was being defended last week, his lawyers said that, yes, he had a close friendship with one of the gunmen, Amedy Coulibaly. They had spent a whole day together. In the days before the attacks, they'd sent hundreds of text messages. But the lawyer said, well, that doesn't prove that he had any knowledge of what was being planned. He said it's normal for people who are in their 30s to send hundreds of text messages to their friends. In terms of the weapons, also with some of the other accused, they have said, we've admitted, yes, we were involved in helping to procure some of those weapons, and there is DNA evidence linking some of the accused to the weapons that were used in the attacks. But some of those accused, they said, well, yes, we may have been involved in procuring the weapons, but we didn't know that they were going to be used for terrorism. We didn't know what was going to be planned. And they said, one of them even said that he felt betrayed by what had happened because he didn't know, he says, that the weapons were going to be used for an act of terrorism. So that's really the difficulty for prosecutors. The judge will go into further detail, the president of the court, when he outlines the rest of the verdicts and also the sentences that will be handed down to those who will be convicted.
Sharon, earlier today you told us about some very moving witness accounts from the courtroom, also accounts from the families of the victims there. It's a very emotionally charged trial and a long-awaited verdict here in France. What sort of message do you feel the judges are trying to pass with the verdicts you've heard so far? Well, one of the lawyers for Charlie Hebdo last week, when he was summing up his evidence,
He said, well, this trial, it's not like any other trial. The alleged crimes, they're not like any other crimes. We need to take into consideration the symbolism of what happened during those attacks back in January 2015. Of course, you'll remember they shook not just France, but the whole world. People came out in rallies of support in the days after those attacks. Here in Paris, there were 2 million people on the streets, including world leaders from 40 different countries. So that was really the message coming from the lawyers for the families of the victims and for some of the survivors. A lot of them are here again today. In fact, there's hundreds of people, I would say. There's the main courtroom. There's also 2 overflow rooms packed with both press, members of the public, families of the victims and survivors. We're expecting to hear from them later once the verdicts are handed down. And once the sentences, of course, are given out. We're expecting that may take some time to deliver, seeing as there are 14 defendants. 3 of them, of course, they're not actually here. They're being tried in absentia.
Thank you very much, Sharon Gaffney there, reporting for us from the courtroom.